Hello again to everyone. I want to formally welcome you to today's webinar, Submitting Your Caucus Conference Proposal. We're very excited to have you with us. Yes, you are on mute. I will speak to that in a moment. So for participation in today's webinar, a reminder you need to join us on the audio line as well as through the slides. You'll notice we have muted all of your lines. We will open the lines up at the end for questions. We hope to have at least 15 minutes at the end, if not more time, to chat with you then. We do have the chat feature in the meantime for you to use and speak with us. If you do need to reach us for some reason verbally throughout the call, you can use *7 to unmute your line. Okay. I want to let you know that we are recording today's webinar, so if you do join us on the line, we'll get to hear your lovely voice in recording as well as today, and that resource will be available to those who are unable to join us today to view at a later time. Okay. If you do have any technical difficulties throughout our webinar today, you can reach us in the chat box, or you can send an email to events@caucus.ca, and Allison will be monitoring that to get back to you. Okay, so my name is Nicole Joron, and I am this year's chair of our Program Review Committee, and I'm very excited to be working on Caucus 2017. I'm currently calling in from York University. I work here as a Student Success Coordinator within the Faculty of Health, and I'm happy to have many Caucus colleagues on the line with me today who I'll let introduce themselves. Jessica? Jessica, do we have you unmuted? So while we're finding Jessica, Jessica is joining us today as a member of the Program Development Committee. She also worked with the Program Review Committee last year, and she's currently working out of Guelph Humber. We also have Karina. Are you there with us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. I'm Karina Fitzgerald, and I am the Assistant Dean for Student Life and Learning at Queen's University, and I've been involved with some of my colleagues across the country in the development of the Competency Model, and they couldn't join us today, but I do want to give Patty Hambler and Tracy Mason-Ennis and Darren Fernandez a shout out.
Thank you very much, Karina. And Allison?
Hi, everyone. Hi there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect. So my name's Allison. I'm the conference manager for Caucus. This upcoming conference will be my 4th conference, and I'm really excited to go to Ottawa with everyone this year. We have some big things planned. I work very closely with Nicole and Jessica and the entire program committee to make sure the conference details are coordinated, and a large part of my role is supporting our membership through the program submission and review process. I manage communications, scheduling, and I'm a resource for all of you throughout the proposal submission process from now until June. So it's nice to be on the call with everyone today.
Thanks, Allison. I think we now have Jessica online with us. Are you here now?
Hi.
Perfect. If you can introduce yourself to the group as well.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm Jessica Pilfold. I'm calling in from the University of Guelph Humber in Toronto, Ontario today, where I'm the Student Services Coordinator. Last year I was involved with the Program Review Committee with Nicole and had a really great experience. So this year I transitioned over to the Program Development Committee.
Thanks, Jessica. As we move forward, I see a note on the chat here. So if you haven't yet introduced yourself on the chat, please feel free to do so. It's great to see who's on the line with us and which institution you are coming from. As Allison has noted, if you select broadcast to all in the drop-down menu before you hit send, that way everyone on the line will be able to see you today. So today's webinar, we want to talk a little bit about what presenting is all about. We want to talk to you about the 5 ways you can share a presentation at this year's Caucus conference. You'll also be highlighting some of the changes that have been made for this year. We'll talk a little bit about the review process, some resources to help you with your submission, and some dates and reminders at the end. So the drop-down menu should be right beside your send button in the chat feature. See some questions coming in. So from those topics that we're going to go through today, these are the outcomes we're hoping that you will achieve by the end of today's session. So as mentioned, an awareness of some of the resources available to you. Also an understanding of the different types of proposals and submissions available for 2017, an understanding of the review process, as well as what makes a good proposal and presentation, as well as hopefully some motivation and encouragement to go ahead and submit that proposal. Okay, so speaking of introductions and wanting to learn about who is on the call, we have a poll here for you. Jessica, you want to take this away?
Absolutely. Thanks, Nicole. So we're interested in learning who's kind of tuned in today. So we've set up a really quick poll to see where you identify yourself in your career. So for today's purposes, new professional, we're looking at 0 to 5 years in the field. Mid-career is probably anything between 5 years and up to when you would consider yourself a senior student affairs officer, which is the next choice. And then other includes faculty, instructors, adjuncts, and anything else that maybe doesn't fit into those 3 earlier categories. So if you want to do the poll, please do.
Allison, is our poll live now for our participants? Oh, here they come. Okay, thanks everyone. I think we have everyone's responses now.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like we have a good mix of people with us today. If you fall in that other category and want to tell us some more about yourself in the chat feature, we'd be happy to hear that as well.
And in addition, oh, sorry, Nicole.
Yeah, please go for it.
Yeah, I'm going. In addition to finding out who's on the call, we're also interested in knowing, have you presented at Caucus before? So this could be recently, it could be a while ago, just looking to see who has some experience presenting at our conference. Ooh, a good number of first-timers. That's awesome. All right, well, thank you very much for sharing a little bit more about yourself. To start off, we want to talk about why would you want to present at the Caucus conference? What's the value of attending and presenting? There's lots of really good reasons regarding professional development, but also personal development. It's a great opportunity to build on a multitude of skills that you can use within your current role, as well as in all other aspects of what you consider yourself to be doing as a student affairs professional. It's also a great opportunity to network, I think, as we all know, both at different sessions and the social activities that are offered throughout the conference. You get the really great chance to share ideas that you're excited about. So beyond your own team or your own institution, people from all over Canada get to hear and learn a bit more about what you're doing in your own context. You also get to make meaningful professional connections. So you're building those relationships with those that might just be down the street from you or those that are across the country. And that further establishes a community of professionals and folks that all share your interests. It's also really fun. So there's that added piece. In terms of who can present, so everyone is encouraged to submit a conference proposal. It can be your first caucus conference, which it looks like it is for a good portion of you, which is very exciting, or it could be your 10th. We are open to proposals from everyone within our student affairs community. And the types of presentations and topics are determined by you as the attendee and as the presenter. So we want to hear from you what you want to discuss and what you want to present on to others.
So as mentioned, we have 5 different types of presentations today that our members can submit for. So the first 2 will be the ones you're most familiar with. So these are traditional concurrent session blocks. So we have 2 different time limits. There's a 45-minute session or a 75-minute session. So your proposal for these sessions might be a bit of a similar approach, but thinking about how to make use of that extra time. So how might you be sharing information? What types of activities? What might be you using in that presentation format that would make your presentation more suitable for the longer versus the shorter lengths of time? We also have poster presentations. And so posters are a great way to talk about programs that you have on your campus or share some research that you've been doing. They're also a great opportunity for those more one-on-one conversations with other delegates as well. And then Jessica, you want to tell us about the last 2?
Absolutely. So we have the Big Ideas sessions, which I think I saw a couple people that are tuned in actually presented in last year, which was awesome to see. This year we're going in a bit of a different direction, and I'll mention that later on. But still Big Ideas, just using the CACUSS platform. So CACUSS is a 6.5-minute presentation where presenters share an idea or their topic using 20 slides that auto-advance every 20 seconds. So kind of an added interesting piece to the Big Ideas forum. And then that's followed lastly by pre-conference sessions. So these occur before the conference begins on Sunday. So they're half-day or full-day workshops that allow conference delegates to delve a little bit more deeply into a topic and to develop their skills in one or more competency areas. So you hear me mention competency area, that's going to come up a little bit later as well. As such, there's a strong push towards session topics within the pre-conference sessions that focus on some aspect of the new Caucus competency model, just in a deeper way.
Thanks, Jessica. I just want to acknowledge we do have some things happening on the chat. Thanks for everyone who's connecting in with us if you are having any difficulties. A reminder that to hear the audio, you do need to call in to join us in addition to watching the slides. And we've clarified that the chat feature, unfortunately our participants cannot see each other's chat today, but we will be looking into that for the future. We are seeing everything you're sending to us though, which is great. So we wanted to take a moment to highlight the changes that have been made this year, especially for those of you who are returning presenters. So the big change for the 45, 75-minute and poster sessions is the integration of the new Caucus Competency Model, which we'll go into a little more into depth next. And we've integrated them this year through the learning outcomes piece. So we've added a section to the conference rubric, the review rubric, specifically about learning outcomes. And as part of that scoring process, the reviewer will be looking at the learning outcome is using the language of the competencies specifically. For the poster sessions, Allison, can you tell us a little more about the exciting changes for this year?
Yes, absolutely. So in response to a lot of feedback we received last year, we are pleased to put forth the idea that we are going to display our beautiful poster presentations across Monday and Tuesday of the conference to coincide with a 2-day sponsor and exhibitor showcase as well. And everyone will be presenting their poster sessions primarily on the Monday. We're working out some details in terms of the display times for Tuesday, but we can certainly confirm that all the posters will remain in the showcase on the Tuesday as well. And you guys will be stationed with the food and beverage service as well to encourage traffic and a lot of interest in the presentation. So we're really excited to extend it well into the Tuesday of the conference this year as well.
Thanks, Allison. So we're definitely excited that posters will be in a more prominent location this year. We want to encourage you to think about those as an option for your proposal formats as well. Jessica, can you tell us more about the new Big Ideas format and how this will look a little different from last year?
Absolutely, thank you. So it is a little different from previous Big Ideas sessions, which were, if you can remember, they were short, about 10-minute PowerPoint presentations with 3 slides. We know that the timing and the number of slides weren't always enforced or followed, so we're trying something new. The Pizza Kucha, as mentioned, is a set of slides that auto-advance. So it allows you to use a new dynamic medium of presentation that's very visual, it's eye-catching, and it holds your attention due to the short duration, because once your time's up, you're done. It also requires a good amount of preparation and rehearsal beforehand in order to stay on time with your slides, since they do auto-advance. But the format shouldn't be considered any less important or playing second fiddle to the longer 45-minute or 75-minute sessions. I think it's just a really more dynamic way to present that lets you get a very visual and very engaging way of presenting your material to the audience. Thanks, Nicole.
Great, and for our pre-conferences as well?
Pre-conference is an open call this year, so we're opening the call for proposals to anyone that's really interested in putting on, like we said, a half day or a full day deeper session. And we're really driving the focus on the competency development. So Karina is going to speak about the competency model very shortly. But we really want to base the deeper learning and deeper reflection within the pre-conference sessions within our 11 competencies in the new Caucus model.
Jessica, I see we have a question about Pizza Kucha here.
Yes. How much time do you have in total? Oh, great question, Jennifer and Sylvie. Thank you. So it's 20 seconds per slide and 20 slides, so it equals about 6.5 minutes total.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other questions from our audience at this point? Okay, so I'm going to pass the floor to Karina next to talk to us a little bit more in detail about what the competency model is all about and what you can expect for competencies in relation to the conference.
Great, thanks, Nicole. Just double checking that you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Great, okay.
Yeah.
I've done this before where I was talking like for 5 minutes and then I realized nobody could hear me, so I don't want to do that. So thank you for including me. I'm going to go over the competency model a little bit, but hopefully folks have had a chance to check it out online. I believe it became available to members in the early fall, so if you hadn't had a chance at the annual conference or through our other consultations last year to get an overview, I encourage folks to have a read through the full document. It's actually not too cumbersome, and there's also an abridged version of it as well. So in terms of how we got to the model that we have, we use the definition of it's important to know what a competency is. And one of the things I think that's come up even in some of my own staff teams is what is the difference between a competency and a learning outcome. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. But the definition that we sort of focused on for a competency is essentially a cluster of related knowledge, skills, and abilities and characteristics that are related to the performance of a significant aspect of the practice of a profession. So obviously our profession is student affairs, and we use that to form the 11 competencies that we'll go through. We also included attitudes and dispositions. That came up over and over again in terms of an approach to the work that we do, and how we think about the work that we do, how students view the work that we do, and then how others view the work that we do. So again, all of these things were part of the focus of the consultation and the development of the model. I'm going to click. Yeah. Right there. Okay. So this is the overview of all of the competencies that we proposed back in the summer to the membership, and then later to the that were adopted by the board of CACUSS. And there's essentially a bit of a framework that we used to kind of hopefully make it clear to folks how we viewed the information, and then how we sort of wanted to disseminate that across the profession. And we talked about the values that we had, I think, in terms of the work that we do, that we saw our work as professional, and that we were also educators at the educational institutions that we all work, and that we all had a student-centered and holistic approach to the work that we do, and that there's an element of professionalism and ethical practice in the work that we do. I'll go through the 3 levels in a little bit more detail, but there's essentially core, intermediate, and advanced levels. And the larger document breaks down each of these into those categories. And as you see here, there's 11 specific competencies that were developed through the consultations. We also felt the need to, through our discussions and in the consultation specifically, that there was something different about the role of a student, senior student affairs professional, and we wanted to be able to capture that, at least have a nod to that. And so we felt that SSAO essentially had to have all of those competencies, and then also really good awareness of leadership, administration, and post-secondary acumen. And then expertise areas, essentially that refers to, there are pieces of the work that we do, or areas of student affairs that have other professional competencies and other things related to them. So as I said, the core, intermediate, and advanced were the categories that we came up with. Each competency is essentially divided into each of those, and they represent a progressive level. So they're meant to sort of be a flow through from one level to the next, in terms of the skills and knowledge that are required across all the areas of student services. Each level is meant to build on the prior one, and folks who identify to be at an intermediate or advanced level are expected to have knowledge and skills in the one that's below that. So I think that's important to think about in terms of who your target audience is for your proposal. So if you're going to do a workshop, or if you're doing a session, or if you're doing a poster, I think it's important to think about who's your target audience and for what level are you thinking about. And sometimes it's those things are based on the number of years of experience in a particular position or within the profession itself. And there are folks who can hold expertise at an intermediate or advanced level and still not necessarily have all the competencies because they're new in the profession. So this is a bit of a nod to folks who have a different pathway. We've talked about pathways into student affairs, but that you may come into, I keep thinking like a health and counseling area in particular because you have expertise in that particular area, but haven't necessarily worked in student affairs. So again, think about those kinds of things when you're developing your proposal. Here's another list of all of the competencies. One of the things, we did quite a bit of work in terms of research, in terms of trying to determine what we thought might be the competencies that were relevant for the Canadian context. So obviously we also, through that, looked at other competency models, a whole lot of them. And so the first 5 we felt, so communication, emotional and interpersonal intelligence, intercultural competence, Indigenous culture awareness, and post-secondary acumen were unique to the Canadian post-secondary climate. And the other 6 are related to the NASPA and ACPA model. So they're a little bit adapted. You'll see the language is a little bit different in each of them as compared to the NASPA ACPA competencies. but essentially they're quite similar to what you would see in any student affairs professional. So the elements related to equity, diversity, and inclusion, leadership, management, and administration, strategic planning, research and assessment, student advising, support and advocacy, student learning and development, and technology and digital engagement. Again, some of the language is tweaked to fit our context and sort of our vernacular in the Canadian student affairs, but they are very similar and adapted from the ACPA NASPA model. I sort of covered this already, but again, think about who it is that you're targeting in terms of your proposals, and how can you sort of have a value add to their experience. And I think this is one of the things I know Caucus has thought about and wants to make a priority, is in terms of reaching the professional development needs of the broader context of the Caucus folks. So how do you do that for SSAOs? And maybe you're a new professional, but there's lots of things that new professionals know how to do that I don't necessarily know how to do, or maybe my colleagues or boss doesn't know how to do. And so again, think about that, and maybe it gives you the opportunity to think outside the box a little bit. The next slide essentially talks a little bit about how we, in addition to the model itself, through the work that we did in the last year, we proposed also a bit of a framework or some thoughts about how we thought the model could influence professional development. So it's great that Caucus is doing this today. Again, it's a bit of a pilot. It's our first full year with the model, and so the work that you all will do in your proposals will sort of inform this, I think, as we move forward. And I see Megan McKenzie's on the call, and she'll have lots of ideas in her new role in terms of how to apply the model to professional development. But we saw that in developing the competency through in a variety of ways. So one would be obviously within Caucus, the opportunity to use the model as a common language and a starting point, so that we're all speaking about the things that we do and the work that we do and the skills that we need using the same language. And so I think that will be important to us both internally, but also as we describe to others exterior, or even internal to your institutions, but maybe in your facilities management group, about the work that we do. So again, giving that common language and sort of that rigor we talked a lot about. Also to you in terms of your own competency development and how you develop your own skills and how you see yourself as a professional. How do you identify gaps amongst your teams, perhaps if you're a mid-level professional. And so again, I do think that relates directly back to professional development and the opportunities that we all make available through Caucus. And because of the way that Caucus conference is sort of runs, we inform a lot of that as members of the association. So again, I think it's a great opportunity for you to think about your proposals in a meaningful way that's contributing to the work of the association and the broader membership of the field, right? So hopefully that comes across. Again, it's the pilot year in terms of its usage. One of the things we thought might be helpful, and again, at the end there's a couple of references, and one talks a little bit about the difference between a competency and a learning outcome. And I think many of us in the profession are quite familiar with the concept of learning outcomes and develop them for our own programs, but I think it's good to have a sense of how we're going to apply that as it relates to the competencies. So this is an example from the equity, diversity, and inclusion competency. It breaks it down, you'll see, in terms of what we consider to be core competencies. So one of the examples is that you understand the principles of universal design. And so as you develop your workshop, I think that's something very tangible that you can sort of build your learning outcome from. And so if I can go to the next slide, again, the competency in this example is that you understand the principles of universal design. Your learning outcome might be participants who come to your session will be able to recall and apply at least 2 principles of universal design within the context of planning a student program. So again, this is something I sort of say that, the competency is the what, the skill, the attitude, knowledge cluster, and then your learning outcome is targeted more at the how you're going to get there. And so what will you how will you measure that learning, right? And so hopefully this is somewhat helpful. And again, there's a link to a resource there that my colleague Patty Hambler forwarded, which I think it's related to Bloom's taxonomy, but I think it could be very helpful in terms of trying to distinguish between what a competency and a learning outcome might be. So I think that's it, and I haven't been checking to see if there's any questions. So the link is dead. Okay, so I don't think that's a question.
So thank you so much, Karina. Thanks for giving us that kind of introduction to the competency model as well as the tangible examples with the learning outcome pieces. We get a note that the link to that resource may not be working, so we will double check that and make sure that is good to go after the webinar so that you all have access to that along with the other resources. Okay, so the review process. So deadlines coming up first. So we have until January 13th for you to submit your proposal. The formal review process that reviewers we also encourage you to apply to be a reviewer as well as being a presenter. And those reviewers will be going through the proposals for the 45-minute, 75-minute, and poster sessions. The big ideas in the pre-conference are a little different, and those will be handled by our program development committee. So our peer-reviewed proposals go through a blind process, so the reviewer will not see the identifying information. And a minimum of 2 or 3 reviewers will go through and score each proposal. And so reviewers score proposals using the rubric that you see on the screen here. So these are the 6 categories where a reviewer will create a score out of 5 in each of these topic areas. And then they will have an opportunity to add comments as well. So when Jessica walks us through shortly an example of how to submit a proposal, she can show us from her screen a copy of the rubric as well. So the rubric is really your best friend in building your proposal, and we encourage you to be going through that as you build up the different components of what your presentation might include. The rubric you'll see has definitions of what should be what is considered a good proposal under each of these categories, as well as qualifiers for what would be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as well, which we hope you will find helpful. So each of our reviewers will get approximately 5 to 10 proposals, potentially more if you're willing to take on some extra for us. And so those proposals will be depending on matching with kind of topic areas and keeping the blind process in mind as well. So if you do submit a proposal and have it accepted, you'll be sent a congratulatory message from us as well as a presenter agreement that will give you some more information about confirming that you are able to present with us, as well as some important kind of next steps and details about presenting with us at Caucus. Okay, Jessica, so what else should a presenter keep in mind to build a great proposal other than the rubric?
Great information given so far. Be sure to check out the resources available to you from previous years as well. So we have descriptions and titles from past conference programs that can offer some inspiration for your own presentation, whether it's how things were phrased or even just some fun, catchy titles. Organizers will be looking for presentations that are appealing, timely, well-researched, and which reflect well on the Caucus conference. You want to make sure that you read the submission guides carefully. The guidelines are there to help you put forward the best proposal that you can, and we want to accept as many as possible, so please make sure that you're reading through the submission guidelines. Have your proposal well laid out, show that thought has gone into it. Points are allocated for organization in the rubrics, so having a clear flow to the information and the order that things are mentioned is always a plus. Follow the word count specifications. We don't want to lose anyone's descriptions within the form, so be sure that you're being mindful of how long all of your entries are, and be free of spelling and grammar mistakes. Sometimes those can derail something that would be really, really good without some errors. The program review rubric is also available on the website. So while you're constructing your proposal, you can keep the rubric handy, and it'll help you build a really strong proposal to be submitted. Point form often doesn't provide a comprehensive understanding of your proposal. It gets your point across very quickly, but maybe not within the amount of detail that a reviewer might be looking for. So try to use full sentences and thoughts. And be sure to provide meaningful learning outcomes. So Karina did an excellent job of giving us some examples of learning outcomes based off of the competency model. And we want to really develop those learning outcomes from each of the 11 competencies. So whichever competency or multiple competencies that your presentation falls within, be sure to develop learning outcomes that will help the reviewer understand what you hope the audience to learn by attending your session. And we have the learning outcomes guide available on the website as well. Nicole, do you want me to show them? We can try sharing the screen to show them the rubric and the learning outcomes guide.
See if we have one more quick slide if you want to just speak to these different resources that you're able to share.
Sure. What do we? Oh, other resources. Perfect. So in addition to the previous pieces, our rubric, be sure that you're speaking to your colleagues and peers. So we're all very enthusiastic and engaging people. So be sure to work in ways to engage the audience and ask for some feedback or guidance from those within your office, those that you know have attended Caucus before. I think there's a really great value within feedback from those that have gone through the presentation and proposal process before. Remember that strangers are potentially reviewing your proposal. So make sure that your information is clear and concise for anyone that would be picking up your proposal. And so in addition to those pieces, there's lots of information on the Caucus website. So the rubric and the Learning Outcomes Development Guide that I've mentioned are all there, as well as a planning guide and template for developing your proposal. Under the call for programs, you'll also find important dates, the types of presentations that we've gone over, tips for making your presentation accessible to all participants that might attend your session. And we encourage, again, that you use your colleagues and peers to build your proposal. And as a couple people have asked in the chat, the webinar currently is being recorded, so you will have access to it after the webinar is completed, and so you can send the link to anyone that might have missed the webinar as well.
Great, thank you, Jessica. If you want to go ahead and share your screen now. So Jessica is going to walk us through an example of where to go on the website and what the submission looks like for a 45, 75-minute or poster presentation as an example, and also speak to the rubric and the links for some of these other resources we're speaking to.
Great. So I'm going to hope the share button does what I think it should. Share. Oh, dear. Okay, can everyone see what I'm seeing? It's the Caucus homepage. Yes? Nicole, can you see?
It looks like it's just loading. I can see now. Yep,
okay.
You're good to go.
Perfect. Great, thank you. So I'm on the Caucus homepage. So if you go to Annual Conference up at the top left, or top right, and then under Get Involved is where we have our call for programs. So you'll see there's also the call for reviewers, the planning and proposal piece, but we're going to go to call for programs. You can click there. It has our lovely introduction to the webinar that you're currently viewing, so you are already ahead of the game. If I scroll down, you'll see some key dates that are coming up about when the call for reviewers close, the call for programs closing on January 13th, and another couple webinars we have coming up to do with the peer review process, as well as being an actual presenter at the conference. So be sure to plug those dates into your calendars if you're interested in learning more. As we scroll down, we have some examples of session topics, and then we get into the types of sessions. So this is where you'll find the application forms for the various sessions that you might want to apply to. The 45-minute and 75-minute session is all one form. Poster session is its own form, and then Big Ideas is here as well. Perfect. So should I go through as if we were going to apply for a 45-minute session?
If you want to just scroll down a little bit under the tips, that is where you'll find the links to all of the other documents we were talking about today. So the planning template, the learning outcomes development guide, and we'll ensure the document from our competency team that they've created is there for you as well.
And what's really nice is they actually pop up onto the submission websites as well. So if I go ahead and click on application form, so you can see it gives us a little bit more background. And then under instructions right at the top is the planning your proposal guide, the learning outcomes development guide, and the program review rubric. So these are all on both the previous page and this page now, so very easy to find. And there's also 2 different ways to apply for the pre-conference and the big ideas session. So click here if you're submitting a pre-conference session, and then click here for the big ideas, as they do go to the program development committee instead of program review. So more information about the poster sessions, and then when you get to the bottom is where you want to be if you want to submit a proposal. If you're not logged into your Caucus login, this won't show up. It'll say please log in or sign up. I've logged in because I was worried I would forget my password while we were doing this, so I wanted to make sure that everyone would be able to see what I was seeing. So I'm logged into my Caucus account, and you just click on New Submission. So remember, this is for a 45 or a 75-minute, but it's a very similar process for any of them. So it auto-populates my information, which is super awesome. There's a space for additional presenters. So if you're collaborating with someone on your team from another institution even, you can provide more of their information here. You choose which session you're applying for. Again, it's the same application form for 75-minute, 45-minute, and a poster presentation. Choose your language, the type of presenter that you are, and then there's spaces for the bulk of your proposal. So the program abstract, again, watch the word count, maximum 100 words, who it's targeted for, the communities of practice that best fit into the topic of your session, and then the 11 competencies that Karina spoke about of where your session lies there. Program description piece. What's really nice here is you have a link to the program review rubric. So if you blew through this and weren't able to open it before you got to your submission piece, you can open it as you put together your program. Same goes with the learning outcomes and development guide as you're writing your learning outcomes. And then the format of your session. So that can include what kind of discussion you might hold, a workshop, what kind of activities you want to do with the attendees, all of that information. How you want the room set up, any sort of AV or materials that you may need, accessibility pieces, and a preferred presentation date, which we try to accommodate as much as possible. But of course, we do our best to make sure that everyone gets the date that they want. Extra comments, and be sure to email Allison, who's on the call as well, if you have any questions about the technical piece. And then you want to make sure that you press save. If you do all of this and press any of the other buttons, all your hard work is for naught. So be sure to save before you leave the page. Is there anything else you'd like me to show, Nicole?
Do you want to maybe just open up the rubric for us as well?
Absolutely. So I have that open up here. So this is what opens when you open the program review rubric. So it reminds you that your program will be reviewed by 3 peers and that the process is blind. And then we have, I'll zoom out a little bit here, we have the rubric here. So the scale of 1 to 5, and then some key categories that you'll be scored on include content, the innovative approach, so how it fits into the current work in the field or builds upon it, theoretical foundation, so what kind of evidence, both theoretical or empirical, that you're employing within your presentation. Learning outcomes, again, a link to the competencies, so super handy as you're thinking about those learning outcomes. And the relevance and significance to the profession and to perhaps the particular functional area that you're presenting in. And then finally, as mentioned earlier, the organization piece. So does your proposal flow well? Is it free of spelling and grammar errors? and is it easy to follow and know what to expect within the session.
Great, thanks so much, Jessica.
Thank you.
If you want to unshare your screen, we'll go back to our final slide.
I will figure out how to do that. This one? Nope. How do I unshare? Uh-oh, stop sharing. There we go.
All right, perfect. So we just wanted to end today with some reminders and then as well as any additional questions that we have from the group. So dates, of course, deadlines always important to have in your calendar. So our first deadline coming up is call for reviewers. We would love to have a record number of reviewers this year. Of course, the quality of our proposals and the number of people able to help us sort through those, it will depend on the number of reviewers we have working with us. So we do encourage, even if you are planning to present, to consider being a reviewer with us as well. So January 13th, we know that January 12th date will be a big date for proposals, so make sure it's in your calendar now and that you're blocking some time for that, especially thinking about the resources and making a great proposal if you are going to share with a colleague or have someone help you with that heading into the deadline to save time for that. We do have 2 more webinars that we'll be doing this year. So one to help our reviewers walking through how to be a reviewer and what that process looks like. And then one for those who are accepted as presenters at the conference to help you get ready for the event as well. Presenters this year will need to submit their presentation in advance. And we will speak to that later in the year for those who are presenting about the tech requirements for this year's venue and what that looks like. And then the conference, of course, so if you are applying to be a presenter with us, we also need you to be at the conference with us. So June 11th to 14th are our official dates, and our conference this year, our past, our future is our theme, and our great host institution is Carleton University. So we'll be in Ottawa celebrating Canada's 150th birthday together. We also have our social media and contact information on this slide. So Allison, you've heard her name so many times today, as a great resource who you can email events@caucus.ca or through social media using the Caucus account or the hashtag Caucus17. We're also happy to connect with you there. So that does conclude the end of today's webinar, other than a question period. So we're happy to take questions through the chat. Or if you would like to speak with us, you can unmute your line now by pressing *7. For those of you who don't have questions who are heading out, we want to really sincerely thank you for joining us and spending time with us today. And we do look forward to seeing you at this year's conference. Thank you for the thank yous coming in here. Any additional questions we can help with?
Nicole, it looks like Jennifer and Sylvie have a question in the chat box.
Perfect. Jennifer and Sylvia, would you like to maybe unmute and speak with us using *7 on your phone?
Hello.
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 So our question, we asked it earlier, but unless we completely missed it and we didn't hear an answer about, because you said you'd notify those that were successful in their proposals. What about those that aren't? Do you just leave us hanging, or are we notified?
Just everyone will receive a notification. Sorry for leaving that detail out.
Okay. That was it.
Anything else we can help with while we have you on the line?
Nope, that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks so much.
Have a good day, ladies.
You too.
Bye.
Any more questions from our group today?
I had a question. Okay. Holy moly, nice.
Jennifer and Sylvie, if you're done with your question, you can remute your line by *6 if you'd like to. Okay, so I'm not seeing any more activity on the chat. We'll do one last call here for any questions before we wrap up. Okay, so seeing none, I want to again thank my lovely co-presenters today, as well as all of you who joined in for today's conversation. Again, the webinar will be online. We've recorded today's session, so if you'd like to revisit any of that information or share with any colleagues, please do. We look forward to receiving your reviewer and your proposal submissions, and are happy to receive any further questions that you have after today as well.